have coping issues, i.e. mental illness or drug addiction or whatever, you know. And the thing that I've come to realize is that a lot of people who are homeless, even if they have family in town, is that the family gets tired. Because it's drama. If somebody has a mental illness, I mean, you know, they can't really, I mean, they can help things to a certain degree, but ultimately if someone has a mental illness, they have a mental illness.
Oh, yeah, that's true.
You know, but then the family gets tired. Because somebody, you know, somebody, or drug addiction, you know, I mean, the family gets tired, you know, and they just, you know, and if you have a home, you have to think about, I mean, it sounds cold, but if you're trying to raise your children and Uncle Joe has issues,
it's hard to do that.
it's hard to do that.
Yeah, because when she said that, I kept thinking, now, how could you go and babysit me? It's just like you, then you're sent over here again. I mean, of course, like you said, you don't understand. I don't know what issues she may have.
Yeah.
But she was staying with her boyfriend. But she, I mean, she was just very honest about it.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, oh, I go and babysit, and I stay with them for a while. And I'm thinking, if you babysit the kids and you're back over here, but like you said, you know, we don't know all the dynamics. We don't really, you know, I can't pass judgment because I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
And but she said she had come from another little town in Georgia, but she's been up here for a few years.
Sure.
And but they have a system that was just unbelievable. The way they keep
Oh,
their
yeah.
little places and
Yeah, that one was
just very
together.
genius. And then
Yeah.
one guy, you remember the guy who had the library?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Had books,
Mhm.
just books, and
Mhm.
in his one little area has books, and then he has his bed there.
Mhm.
And then how they get the water, they have this little, it's like a rain barrel.
Mhm.
Is that what? It's pretty much like a rain barrel where they collect the rain.
Mhm.
Because there's no running water.
Right, right.
And of course they don't have lights, so they have
They have a
candles,
tarp on the house
and they
that
have
run
tarps
the
on
water
the
down.
house. I mean, it is truly like it takes you back almost like you were in some time period where people actually live that way.
Mm-hmm.
And it's right next to the college,
Mm-hmm.
but you can't see it.
That's in the
It's
street.
hidden back
Yeah. Down a little road.
along the road, so
Yeah.
you would never see it. And some of them have jobs, but they're not.
Not
Probably
getting enough to
one
buy.
day,
Yeah.
you know, so it's
Yeah,
not
day
enough. It's enough for
laborer.
them to have food.
Yeah.
I mean, to get food or something, but they're like day laborers or something.
Well, and also too, I mean, there are a lot of times too, not necessarily there, because they seem to be higher functioning, but what the other shantytown, a couple of the guys there basically can't really conform to a structured environment, and they prefer to be out there on their own. You know, and the guys in shantytown, a lot of times they don't want to be at the group shelter, because really, like Pine Street, from what I've heard, is basically survival of the fittest.
Pine Street was a whole different.
Yeah, and they don't.
Yeah,
And it's like, you know, and a lot of the guys who are out in the shantytown, like, that's just
it's
dangerous.
real different up there.
Yeah, it's different. So they rather fend for their own out there in the woods than to compete with the you know, what's the children's book about Lord of the Flies type situation. You
It's
know,
real different.
different. Yeah, yeah. And I'm not saying, but the people there who are trying to serve them are trying to do a good thing, which kind of brings me to a side note. Just want to point this out too, that, you know, year after year, you'll see the same people out there. Like I said, there may be some intrinsic issue or underlying issue that's not being treated. But sometimes, one of the epiphanies I had about outreach is that sometimes it's about just simply meeting the need today. In other words, you know, I tried to, a long time ago, before Nick and I got married, or together, I was used to teaching GED courses at a shelter. And one or two of the ladies seemed to be showing progress, but most of them was like, and not that I wasn't a teacher, but I was trying to teach, but it's like,
Right.
I mean, at some point the light bulb went off my head that these women, they have a fundamental issue that's not being addressed that I can't really solve. And it gets frustrating to see that people aren't really, because you have this vision, you're going to go out and help somebody step up. But sometimes outreach is simply about, well, you know, being manna from heaven, essentially, that you feed them today. And God will provide someone else for them tomorrow. And they may live out their life and they may never leave this station, and you can't, you know, you can't get frustrated because they're not progressing in your eyes.
I think one of the things that when you're doing outreach and when you're working with people, period, one of the things I had to learn working with my clients over the years is that you cannot impart your value system on someone else.
Yeah.
And you have to accept them where they are. And sometimes that's difficult because I know it was interesting. We used to do a survey with our parents, and I was thinking that all these things that were important to me were going to be, and I remember having one parent saying that she needed to lose weight. That was her first priority. And the other things like I thought would be important, then I had to look at that and say, okay, this for her, and I need to help her deal with that.
Yeah.
So we can't always look at what we
Yeah.
think they need.
Yeah.
Because, and I think we need to be careful about making sure that we address their issues based on what their needs are, and not what we think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because then you've accomplished nothing.
Yeah, and sometimes people ask for money, and they have, I mean, it's obvious they have an addiction, they're probably going to use it or something. But
Right.
it's like, but sometimes you just have to let go. And not knowingly enable someone, I would say, but you have to just, when you give, my former Sunday school teacher told me this one time, that, like, sometimes people don't give because they don't know what the person's going to do with the money. And we say, well, no, you give because God tells you to give. And then what they do with it, that's between them and God. That's on them.
I had an incident when that happened. I didn't give the lady the money. She asked me, she said she was hungry. I was over there in the Corpus and in West End. So I asked her what did she want to eat. And she said she wanted some chicken. And I went and got the chicken for her, and no sooner than I got back in my car, she threw it in the trash can. And what angered me was not so much that I had bought it, but I'm going like, you know what? You could at least given it to somebody else. That was what made, if you didn't want it, don't just throw it in the trash can. You could have gone down the street and sold it. I mean, it just, that was the thing that angered me.
Yeah, and you find people that will try to hustle you, and like I said, the first time they may get over, but by the second time they come back, sometimes a lot of times they'll hustle you and you see them again because in the community, but then you realize, okay. I mean, at some point you do have to kind of realize what's going on, but if you don't have any, when you can try to be open, but then too there'll be people that don't really want it, and I don't want to go into a tangent here, but we had a situation in church with someone who was, apparently on drugs, and I was trying to help him out, but then just realized that he really was just kind of gaming us, So, but I want to move on here. So basically, like I said, this is the book, and what I wanted to discuss was, I guess I said pilgrimage/outreach opportunities. And what this is about is in service opportunities, possibilities. This is what I was talking about when we first opened the discussion here, is to, we discussed, to put everything on the table. We discussed what we've done in the past regarding outreach, and I'm limiting this discussion, like I said, what I've been involved with the homeless. Be they children or adults. And we've done our own thing. Okay, we found shelters to go to, things like that, but we basically put everything together, rolled it out, took care of it. Okay. And one possibility, like I said, I'm kind of limited by my own experiences and my thinking, so I want you guys to add, bring more to it. But the one thing that I did, for example, when I talk here about a service possibility, Olu had gone down to Big Bethel, and they have the Trinity House. And the Trinity House, I don't know about the legality of how the relationship is, but essentially, Big Bethel was sponsoring the Trinity House. I think they're leasing them the space for like $1 a year, or something like that. So it's a shelter, a men's shelter, but it's more than that. It's a transformative type situation where the guys basically, if you're homeless, you're on a waiting list to get in, because it's a treatment center, and they have a very good track record of turning the lives around for these men. And they stay in there, and they have different levels that they graduate to for being clean for so long, and they get them work and all this kind of stuff. And Olu wanted me and Rudy to go down there and talk to them. and to see if there's any opportunity, we were interested in participating as a church. And well, I liked what I saw down there. So, and what I did was I went and got information, and you guys are welcome to look at any of this stuff, but they have different types of conduits. They have different programs. They have like, a church, outside church will sponsor a day where they come in and bring food and everything, and they have a kitchen and everything there. They will do things, or they might have entertainment. They have a musical, like they have like a cafe type environment sometimes where a group will come in and do the guys will sit around and just be blessed by musical talents or spoken word or something like that. So they're very creative and progressive in their thinking regarding the homeless, and I was really taken with it. That the thing about it is, for churches, it's basically the different opportunities require a certain number of people, a certain amount of commitment. You need to have 10 people. If you're going to split a shift with a different church, you need 20 people to staff this weekend. Basically, giving their staff a day off, and you come in and take over and serve the men on that particular night. But this is one opportunity, and initially I was thinking, oh, this is the way I would like us to go. But then I thought, well, what I really want to do is to look at what other types of outreach opportunities there are out there, and which one actually fits best and what Impact can do. Because I think, we were a larger church. This I think would be an easier fit. This would be a stretch for us, and I don't want to commit to something and not be able to follow through. So that's my hesitation with that one. So, and basically, there are other ministry opportunities and outreach opportunities in the city that we could look at as well, that we could partner with. And even like we went to the Nicholas House, which is a children's family shelter, with mostly children there. They have some long-term opportunities or ministry opportunities, and then there's our house, which is the children's shelter out in Decatur. I'm saying there are lots of them. We can, I can email you from different places I know of, but I don't know everything. In fact, I know only a little bit, and I guess what I would like us to do is one of the outcomes from this meeting is, and you may not know now at all, but if each of us can kind of research, and I'll also ask the other people, the three who aren't here today, and I think our next meeting is like the 28th of September or something, because it's a ways away. So we got time to do this. But my hope, 29th, yeah, so that's 21 days, to go out at some point and investigate, take an hour or two, do a little bit. You can go on the internet and research things. Just, think about who we are as a church, and kind of what you think, what you feel like we can do. It might be a one-time thing. It might be a multiple, an ongoing relationship. Like I said, everything's on the table right now. And like I said, I started thinking about this, looking at this, something like this, though, that's already set up. I thought, well, you know what? Maybe instead of us having to take all this energy we expend into ramping up every time we want to do a homeless mission, maybe if we just say, hey, on this date, so-and-so they need some people to come in there and work the kitchen. And we all go down there and work the kitchen. 10 people show up. Well, everybody sign up. Maybe we can do it through our community church builder thing. We can put up a list and say, well, okay, we've agreed to go in there on this date. We need 10 people. In other words, can we make it? Can we make it simpler? I mean, like I said, that's just a possible. I'm not saying that's a decision. That's just a possible. Yeah. You got the hot. I think we're sitting in the sun.
I was kidding.
Sorry.
But I think it's the sun.
I like it.
It's the
So
sun.
I probably never would have said anything. It is. I mean, it's warm.
Yeah, it's
but
the
I
sun.
like it.
It's the sun.
Let me turn the air up a little bit.
Let me ask you this, Alan. Are we speaking of several different ministries or events? I see when you said we will have one after we get through this, the last three. Are we speaking of several during the year, or is it just based on need, or?
Well, several during the year. I think that, and I don't know if this is true, but my premise is I'm thinking that if we leverage other ongoing ministries, that we can have more
Make it
events.
more. Okay.
Because right now, at the most we've ever had, it's been like 3 in a year.
Okay.
So it's usually 2 or 3 events a year. But if we were to leverage, some of the existing things, we could maybe have 5 or 6 different things that impact church participates in.
I can think of one that I did years ago. Some kids at OP, have you ever heard of that? These kids in foster care that never played. I mean, they're not, they live in the facility. I forgot what they call it. I don't know if it's run by the county. But they actually live there. And
Like the place over there by Harper. What was the name of that? Over there. It's been there forever. Over there,
is it actually on Fairview?
I think it is. I forgot the name. Oh God, it's been there
They
forever.
have it's like a little village. They have little houses. I can't remember. I ain't talking about.
Do you guys want to move in there?
No,
With the fans?
Yeah,
Okay.
it's
Okay.
fine. I mean, like even a little fan just helps with a little breeze, something, you
I
know.
kept thinking it was me. I kept thinking, oh,
Well, no, you sitting. No, you sitting.
the sun.
You
It's
sitting
the
in the
sun.
window seat.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I know which one you're talking about because it's
It's
not that
been
far
there
from that little
forever,
bridge.
and
little-
yeah.
Where now?
Huh?
Where now?
It's over.
Over there near on Fairburn. It's a home that they've had. It's been there for 40 million years.
Near Hopper Archer. It's
Near
before you get to the
Hopper, yeah.
school if you're going down Fairburn.
And I
You know, if you were
cannot.
going from Martin Luther King to Fairburn,
Mm-hmm.
it's before you get to that light there.
You're talking the one that has the little buses in the fence, right? Not that place.
That's a day.
It's not too far from the, there's like a senior center, there's a senior living center on the same street. Like,
Because
on
they've
Fairburn
had
Road.
kids there. I mean,
Okay. I know the area. No, but it's hospital used to be.
No, it's not on that end of Fairburn. It's on the
way
end.
down, way down the other end.
South.
Going right. You know where Harper Archer High School
I know.
is?
it's named after a lady. I want to say like the Celeste or Clement, someone to see her name. I had to go.
Yeah, it was a. Oh God, I can't. And like I said, it was there even when I was in high
I was
school.
gonna say,
We
it's
not
been there
really
forever.
They
got it.
renovated lately. Actually, they had
Yeah.
like a new like pool and gym and anything, but
But the 1% I was thinking of, these are kids that are still in foster care, and never adopted.
Mhm.
And I went there for a meeting once, this is years ago, and I actually went there and had a good class with the kids. And they live, most of them are teenagers now, but they were, I can't remember the name of it, I have to just try to find it. I think it's called Oak Hill. I don't know if it's run by the county. And the kids were real interesting because you could sort of sense their, it wasn't anger, but almost like nobody wants us,
Oh.
I mean, you could really kind of feel it.
I will say it would be difficult for us as a organization, and being somebody who works with kids in foster care, a lot of the new regulations don't allow that easy preventance of people from the street. You have to not only be background checked now, but you have to be federally background checked, which is $75 a person,
Right.
Oh, really?
a pop. Yeah, and so it's not, I don't think, I'm not saying it couldn't be, but I think that was one of those things that
we were talking about. We need to know that. Too.
right, that would be one of those things that would
Yeah.
be a long-term committee of people that are dedicated to going in week out. Because one thing that kids in foster care don't need are people who come once and then they leave, and then a new group comes again and then they leave. That is it's almost probably counterintuitive and counterproductive to the therapy that they're having done and the work, because abandonment issues are huge for that population.
And you can sense it. Obviously, that was not the requirement when I went.
Yeah, this is.
But I actually went through a person who worked there. I mean, it wasn't like I just came in.
Oh, no, I understand.
Yeah,
Even
but I understand
now,
what
yeah,
you're
you
saying.
can't
Yeah,
even,
but you
like,
can't.
Yeah, a
probably-
lot
You know, but that's-
of laws have changed pertaining to children.
because of
Yeah.
all the.
But but that touches
exploitation.
on an important point though. It's like level of commitment. I mean, that's one thing when we're evaluating these different opportunities, we need to look at level of commitment. Is it a parachute drop type situation? Or is it a situation where it's going to be, like Christina was saying, that you can't just have people come there 1 week and then disappear, So those are the kind of metrics we need to kind of, bring back from the various opportunities. And maybe, thinking about it now, maybe we need to have some kind of evaluation form or something, to critique each of the opportunities that are before us.
I think that'd be a good idea to kind of have a standard of certain questions that we need to have answers to, so that we can judge accordingly as to. Right. Because like Nicholas House, for example, because we volunteer there every week with our after school program, our kids feed every Tuesday for the
Cool.
school year, and they don't require the background checks because those kids are still with their parents. So legally, they're, you know, the children have the ability to interact, so that's a facility where you could go in with somebody and not have that extreme background and the financial commitment. You know, and I think that is definitely a good opportunity because it still ties into the homeless mission, you know, and things like that. And so I definitely think that's good. Cafe 304, I think or something like that, or 354, that's a good one as well.
Yeah, on Ashwood.
Which is the restaurant that actually serves homeless people in a restaurant style.
Yeah.
And you know, so there are lots of, I think you're on point when you say instead of us maybe reinventing the wheel, or especially seeing some of the challenges that we face doing ministry ourselves, being that we don't have the necessarily space or capacity to have that infrastructure. Partnering, I think, is going to be a really ideal thing. And I think one niche that we can really do instead of just partnering even in the traditional way is actually going to those organizations and asking them for their most recent needs assessment.
Yes.
Because a lot of times, even within a very strong infrastructure, they have weaknesses. And we can really come in and make differences in those weaknesses. They, you know, like Nicholas House gets people to come and feed all the time. But one of the things I found out that they really have weakness for is that the parents are required to go to parenting classes, and they don't have babysitters for the kids at all times.
Oh, wow.
And so oftentimes parents can't meet their obligations to the home, and sometimes are at risk of being put out of the home because they can't find or be facilitated to have the necessary care all the time. So there are a lot of things that those like little small holes where we can really, I think, fill in and make some programs go from great to astounding, you know, with just our efforts.
Yes, I agree.
So.
There's a project that I worked with last year, Global Village. I don't know if any of you have heard of that.
I've heard of it.
They featured them on one of the stations. But anyway, it's the Decatur Presbyterian Church is housing this group. It's all these kids that have come in from different countries. And most of them have come in from well, the State Department, you know, each year they allow so many come in for different reasons. Some of them have been in countries where there was a lot of conflict and uprising. And they have kids from a lot of different countries. And so they started this school, a lot of this is going to be their 4th or 5th year. And they actually are housed in the church. So my book club went over, we supplied, last year we supplied dictionaries, and they have this author's tea every year where parents and people in the community who are volunteers come in and help. But they really depend on volunteers because obviously they're being funded through donations and things like that. But the kids actually stay there until they can actually be merged into a regular school. And some of them, of course, have language problems. But it's amazing how quickly, because I've gone over there off and on for the last 2 or 3 years, and it's amazing to see. And then their stories. The stories are just unbelievable, you know, what they've endured and where they've come from. So they're always in need, but not necessarily, and this would have to be, like I said, more of a continuous thing because they need volunteers all the time. And, but a lot of times at the beginning of the year, they have a lot of requirements for, like we took dictionaries over, but they have a lot, like a long list of things that they are always in need. But these kids, some of them come from African countries, some of them come from Thailand and Burma, and there are usually areas where there has been, like I said, uprising or conflict in those countries.
That's good. That's good. Well, I think, like I said, that's good stuff. I think that, you know, the opportunities that we all, like that we all have a different walk and we've all experienced different things and can reach out, and some things we may have heard of, or even now maybe go research some things. But what I will do is I will try to pull together a kind of a high-level evaluation form. Like I said, like every place you go to is probably going to give you something like this, what I have here, like some materials about the different ministry opportunities that they have. At least they should have something, or maybe they'll tell you verbally if they don't have it printed out. But when we do our evaluation process of what, you know, works best, where we should go at the church, then, you know, we want to have some kind of, you know, way to compare things and figure out what we can do. And like I said, whatever we commit to, we need to do.
Jen, you know, with your background as a caseworker for pre-K, you know, you had a lot of agencies you had to work with.
One of the things that you can, that's really a good resource, and especially for people who don't know how to access that, you know, the helpline with United Way. And even if you go down there and talk with them, they can connect you to different, because, you know, you always have the popular agencies that get a lot of attention. but then there are so many small agencies that they help and refer people to, and those agencies need a lot of help.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to, provide services throughout, and it's even harder